Yes. So welcome everyone. Bienvenidos. This is a part of our webinar series in conjunction with the California Agave Alliance and many other people, Cali Agave, Mi Oaxaca, and many people. Yeah. So we are really proud to be here. I really want to give the floor to Fabiola. Look, Adam is joining. So Fabiola Santiago Hernández was born in Oaxaca and raised in California. She is of Zapotec descended from the mezcal-making pueblo of Santiago Matatlán, the world capital of mezcal. Her experiences as a formerly undocumented person and her deep connection to Oaxaca's rich culture anchor her dedication to equity and cultural preservation. She's the founder and director of Mi Oaxaca, whose purpose is to attribute Oaxaca's culture and culinary contributions to indigenous lifeways and traditional ecological knowledge, while also working towards economic, ecological, and cultural equity in the globalized world. Fabiola has spent 15 years working at the intersection of community health and social change. She has extensive experience in public health research, narrative change strategy, and popular education. Her work has helped change policies at the local and state levels, shift and build power of marginalized communities, and improve the health of those communities. She's worked in the areas of immigration, labor and employment, incarceration, criminal justice or injustice, education, housing, transportation, and other social conditions that affect health. Fabiola is a thinker and is a systems and intersectional thinker and brings her personal and professional experiences to all her work. She earned a BA in sociology and a master's in public health from UCLA, Go Bruins. As a parent, she nurtures adventures, creativity, and respect, especially for our earth. She understands that she's raising the next generation and takes the role seriously. Fabiola, we have had a lot of conversations and we are super excited to have you here. I don't want to take more time of yours and the floor is yours. Bienvenida.
Welcome. Gracias, Fabiola.
Claro, gracias a ustedes. Thank you. Welcome, everyone, and greetings. Buenas. To me, it's still, oh no, it's buenas tardes now. I do have a presentation. This is being recorded, so you will have access to it. So let's just get started. First, I want to start with some permission acknowledgement and some practices. So for me personally, permission is very important because it's how we engage with each other. One example is that before we plant seeds and before we harvest, sometimes even before we speak, we ask for permission. And that's more rooted in respect. Second thing around this slide is the acknowledgement. And for me, acknowledgement is an act of respect to the collective ancestors, as well as the radical ancestors who transmitted their wisdom, so we can be here. Of course, I want to name and acknowledge my Zapotec ancestors, my grandparents on both sides, as well as the folks who I never got to meet, and all the folks who have inspired me and influenced me. And the third thing that I want to bring into this space is some group practices. I invite you all to be curious. So ask all the questions. We are here to learn. You can unmute yourself or you can add it in the comments. The second thing is reflection, and you can do that on your own or you can do it out loud. The one way that you can do that is to practice critical thinking. And the third thing that I invite you all to partake in is awareness, and that is to be aware of how much space you take or you don't take, and how you ask questions. I will say, if there's something in my content that brings up something for you that's uncomfortable or triggering, or causes something in you, whether that's an elevated heart rate or tension or makes you want to react, that is very welcomed as long as it's done respectfully. Okay, a little bit about me besides the big bio or the long bio that Samuel just read. I am from the nominal world's capital of Mezcal from Santiago Matatlán, and I do have an image here of me before we migrated with my brother, and a big, huge maguey in the background with the milpa, with our corn there. This is the home that I grew up in. And then on the right side, I have my child who is also among maguey fields. I wasn't documented for 20 years, and that is a very important component of how I see the world because it's how I experience the world. Anyways, I already talked about this a little bit in the bio. And about Mi Oaxaca, we are advancing food, land, and cultural justice through equitable education and economic programming. We envision a world where Oaxaca's indigenous lifeways and practices survive and are attributed as their own. What I mean by that is that it's not Mexicanized. A little bit about you, where I already asked to put in where you're calling in from, but if I can get a couple folks to either put in the chat, name an element of your culture that is very particular to you, whether that's language, ethnicity, traditions, custom, belief systems. I forgot the etc. there, but it should say etc. I'll wait a couple minutes for folks to share some stuff. No one? I mean, I can also name maybe something that we often don't think of culture, but it is culture. I think in the United States, we have a car culture, right? We don't, a lot of us, especially in big cities, don't rely on public transportation as much. We are very much, and especially in LA, for example, it's a big car culture. Those are like, that's an example. I do have here in the chat, Sonia, who says, let's see. Oh, yes, getting responses. Zapoteca from Valles Centrales, who is reconnecting with language from San Lucas Chiavini. Yes, so very particular language there. And the Zapoteca from San Lucas Chiavini is going to be different from the Zapoteco of Santiago Matatlán. So that is a very particular thing. Aquí, Laila, she, her, Cosmiwak land, mutual, whoops, I lost it. Our cultural foodways are so important, Mexican and Jewish. Yes. Leslie, she, her, ella, calling in from Tongva land. We truly value reciprocity and the collective. Connection to the earth from Natalie. Michelle, any pronoun, and also shared where they're from. All family lives in South Korea. And Judith, my Isi, Maguey are the foundation of my identity, inherited from my Mixteca family. Beautiful. Thank you for that. Sweet. Carol, I'm going to read this last one. She, I am mixed race, mestiza from Mexico and US. My deep cultural connections are in Mexico. I am bilingual. And Juan Valdez, diving more into Zapoteco traditions, as well as learning deeper about paternal norteño side. Oh, I love this. Okay, this is good. This is good. I'm going to stop here just so we can keep going, but I do see another last one. Heritage is Zapoteca from Valles Centrales, Tlacolula, on both sides of parents, Oaxacali presente, Oaxaca, Sierra Norte also presente. Yes, love it. Thank you. All right. So first thing is a note on language. I started with that question just because it's helpful for context. But today you're going to hear me say and use the word maguey and not agave because maguey derives from the Taino people of the Greater Antilles and other islands. It is believed that the original word was Maguey. And in pueblos in Oaxaca and probably in other places in Mexico, I do stick to Oaxaca because that's where I visited, that's where I'm from, that's where I've spoken to people. They will use, this is changing, I will say. I'm starting to hear more people use the word agave, but we use maguey because that's the name of the plant. For example, maguey tobala, maguey tobasiche, or jabalí, espadín, etc. It's all maguey, and it's because there's that connection to the indigenous roots, and also it's in Spanish, and it's the regional Mexican word, Spanish-Mexican word for it. But there are other indigenous names for the plant. In Zapoteco, we have dob or tob. And for those of you who are more versed in plant names, when you say tobala or tobasiche, you are actually using a Zapotec word to refer to the plant. In Nahuatl, we have metal. In Chontal, we have almal. Mixteco, we have yavi. and so on. These two with the asterisks are from the other states, but these all that don't have an asterisk are from Oaxaca, just Oaxaca. All right, let's talk about some objectives. So I will feel great after this if folks walk away with at least one of these things. One is to define cultural appropriation. And within that is to identify the nuances of cultural appropriation within Mexico and in the mezcal context. Second is to understand the cultural significance of mezcal to Central Valley Zapotecs, Tiza. Tiza is a Zapotec word for us. Zapotecs is actually Nahuatl of Oaxaca. And then third is to reflect and list ways to move away from appropriation and instead practice appreciation and cultural attribution. I know we live in a culture where, like, when we see a problem, we want to find a solution right away. So I did try to bring some of that. It's not exhaustive, of course, but we'll dive into it a little bit. So let's start with definitions. What is culture? Can just words on the chat, or you can unmute yourself. What comes to mind? It doesn't have to be a full sentence. It could be a word. It could be phrases. Traditions. Identity. Hey, Steve. Connection. Cool. All right. Keep belief systems, value systems, language, relationship to others, to language, to land, etc. Yes. Oops. No, we're good. And what is appropriation? I see origin stories. I was looking into this and I was like, is it appropriation? Is it plagiarism? Is it misappropriation? I think it's important to talk about it a little bit and just dissect it. Anybody want to put out some words or phrases that come to mind when you hear the word appropriation? Extracting something from somewhere else for own benefit without regard or respect for its origins. Use of without acknowledgement, use without permission or compensation. I love the compensation part. I think that's very important. Thank you, Clayton. Good to see you in here too. Yes, when you use something intangible or tangible for economic benefits. Yes. Well, I say we start by defining because it's just such a big umbrella term or phrase. So we're going to have some examples, and I pulled up a couple of them. The first one is from this article that Nomad Cook or Luis Hernandez wrote, and that this is a comrade, a colleague. And in his piece, I really enjoyed it because it was around cultural appropriation of food. And he writes, cultural appropriation happens when an external agent from a dominant culture takes an element from an oppressed culture or people, I put that in brackets, without properly honoring the extracted value of the original owners. Often people confuse it with cultural assimilation or cultural exchange. It's here when the dominance of culture comes into play. And then the second one that I pulled out, this is just from like a Google search. It's the unacknowledged or inappropriate adoption of the customs, practices, ideas, etc., of one people or society by members of another, and typically more dominant people or society. And then sometimes, like, I feel definitions can be really long. So I'm like, it's basically to take others' cultures or elements of it and make it their own without acknowledging the original people. Sometimes for me, it's easier to think of this in individual terms, which is to plagiarize, to copy and not give credit, to like say something and not cite your sources. I see here that Juan said presenting other cultures or communities as your own for your benefit. And Steve said taking without permission from those who traditionally use it and without compensation. Yes, I think the permission part is very important, right? But anyways, in general, the keywords that stand out are dominant. There is a power dynamic, that there are some people that practice something that another people with dominance, and to define that, it could be that they have a larger population. It could be that they have more social capital, more presence, more resources, more economic resources, etc., take an element and then they basically present it in a way that is not originally intended, and then they benefit economically from it. Okay, now let's dive a little bit deeper into additional context, because what I'm talking about here today is cultural appropriation as it relates to mezcal and as it relates to indigenous or a particular indigenous group or population. This list, first of all, there is no definition or like one definition that we can all agree on when we want to define indigenous and who is indigenous. But this list comes from the Indigenous Forum, Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues group. And I want to pull out a couple things here, which is that, let's see, there is historical continuity with pre-colonial and or pre-settled societies. In Mexico in particular, we don't necessarily go by native or nations. We're more pueblos originarios. So those are original pueblos. The other one that I want to pull out is this distinct social, economic, or political system. Oaxaca is one of the states with one of the largest indigenous populations. And we also have many of the pueblos have their own governing systems, often called usos y costumbres. And there's a whole history about that. We won't cover it today, but we do cover it in our 6-week course. But it's a different way that we structure ourselves. Then the distinct language, culture, and beliefs is a very key one, and especially as it relates to mezcal, because the ways that we embed the use of mezcal into our cultural practices is not the way that I would say the rest of Mexico or other particular places in Mexico, and certainly in the United States, is not being used. And then this part that we form non-dominant groups of society. That can mean, a lot of things, but I think what comes to mind for me is more like the economic component. And then this last one, which is to resolve to maintain and reproduce their ancestral environments and systems as distinctive peoples and communities. So there is like a uniqueness to our collective identity, or like our community identity, that is. I'm sure people can add more, but we do at Mi Oaxaca, and I myself use indigenous and not so much native, because somebody can be born in Oaxaca and they can call themselves natives but not be connected to a pueblo that is part of the pueblos originarios, and there is a difference there. Okay, more context about Oaxaca. For folks who don't know, Oaxaca is a southern state in Mexico. And like a lot of countries throughout the world, there are usually cultural differences between the northern part of the country and southern part of the country. We can even look at California. There's like the Northern California culture, and there's Southern California. There is this particular, I don't know if it's beef, but it's not serious, right? It's like kind of playful between, for example, Bay Area and LA. But so we find these kinds of differences as well in Mexico. And what I want to pull out from this is that Southern Mexico in particular, yes, Oaxaca, Chiapas, Guerrero, sometimes Puebla, are kind of seen as these states that, because of the large indigenous population, are also seen as within the white dominant gaze, less than or more indigenous. But now that a lot of the indigenous things are trending, people seem to want to have a little bit more proximity to those states. Then on this other side, I have the map of Oaxaca that is organized in the 8 regions. We're going to be focusing on Valles Centrales today, because that is where mezcal production is concentrated. You will find mezcal production in the Mixteca, definitely in la Sierra Sur and la Sierra Norte as well, but a little bit less in definitely, yes, maguey grows in these regions, but it is not a historical practice to make it or distill it. And also each region has a cultural element associated, or cultural elements associated with it because of its microclimates. And we talk about that as well in our course around cultural landscapes and the social, cultural, political landscapes that exist within Oaxaca. And here is a map of the indigenous peoples of Oaxaca. Today it is about Zapotec people, but again, I think we wrote Central Valley because if you look at the Zapoteco or the Zapotec map, where it's one of the big, it's the largest one. We have the largest representation, but you know, some folks from El Istmo are also Zapotec, but there is going to be differences in how they do their culture versus how Central Valley engages in cultural practices, in particular as it relates to mezcal. And yeah, just showing here, like there are 16 indigenous groups just in Oaxaca. And also, for example, Mixtec people, yes, Oaxaca does have its, you know, state borders, but people in the Mixteca are also in Guerrero and in Puebla. So these are just, you know, also some arbitrary boundaries or borders rather. Okay, so let's get into the uses of mezcal in Central Valley Zapotec people. We use it throughout life, for birth, for life, for death. In birth, for example, it has been a practice for people when they give birth, right after birth, they take a little bit. And the idea there is that te ayuda a sacar los aires. We won't get into the curanderismo components of it, but it is something that like it helps. It's very warm, right? Mezcal is very warm for the body. So when during childbirth, when there's just like you're so open, a lot of air comes in. And I'm not a traditional, you know, medicine person. I don't know it, but I just know the concepts. And these are things that like my mom taught me and my grandmother taught me, that like, oh, some herbs are hot and some foods are hot and some are cold. And so like when you're open, like you want to like close it. So mezcal helps you close the body back up together. And you even will see it with like the cerradas, with the rebozo, also another part of postpartum care. I put offering before planting as part of the birth because again, it's related to permiso. I don't see it, you know, in all the time, but it is a cultural traditional practice to pour a little bit of mezcal on the land right before beginning to plant some seeds. And more than mezcal, we also offer food, whatever foods we have. And it's just a way to engage with the land and to communicate and build relationship with land. Then for life examples, we have, I put before harvesting here. Also though, construction and community projects. I have some images, so I'll share those stories in a little bit. For medicine and healing is a very, very key one, whether it's for susto and espanto, and that was my very first experience with mezcal when I was like 4 or 5 years old. Stomach aches, sore muscles, fevers. These are mostly when they are infused. So herbs are put into the mezcal and you create like a topical. And then it's a commitment. It helps seals commitments, whether that's a marriage proposal, mayordomías, weddings, or other celebrations. It is a very important spirit and part of our celebrations. And of course, death at burials. Again, right before people start excavating, and then also the last thing, and even like putting a bottle at the gravesite. And of course, in the altares for fieles difuntos or todos santos, or commonly known in the commodified world, Dia de Muertos. Oh no, the pictures aren't showing. What's happening here? Here, let's try to refresh because sometimes it shows. Oh, see, it does do that sometimes. I'm gonna zoom in because this has happened before when I do Canva presentations. So pictures for my visual learners. This first one, you'll see that there is a botella de mezcal. There's a beer. There are cigarettes to symbolize tobacco, and then of course copal. This is right before they, this is in my pueblo in Santiago Matatlán, right before they started upgrading this bridge that was not leveled out. And so before construction even began, it was like a solid hour of just hanging out, just like passing out food, spending time together, and pouring mezcal all around. it's kind of like our holy water. Which, I'm like, damn, you would never see this in the US, right? You don't see construction workers being like, let me pour some mezcal or something and ask, the land for permission and like pray so that this bridge can hold us and like be here for a long time. This is the part of intention this is how we set intentions. This second one was from a few years ago when we went hiking. Well, what we call hiking, but it's our caminata. It's an annual walk that we do in our pueblo. And it's for Nueve Puntas. It's the mountain range that hugs the pueblo. It's an all day, it's a day long hike, I would say. And you could see we made a hole right before we started our route. We all gathered, put cigarette, and we poured mezcal, but we also all drank a little bit as part of it was our way of asking for permission to the mountains that we're going to enter. Please protect us, keep us safe. It's our way of introducing ourselves to our mountains. I bring this up because especially as Oaxaca is seeing a lot of tourism, and especially tourism by outsiders, people who are not from Oaxaca, they're not asking for permission. And that's because they don't have a relationship with that land. And more than anything, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, we have our own governing system. And so the mountain has caretakers, if you will, which are usually the comuneros. That is a service. It's a servicio. It's part of our usos y costumbres. It's a slightly different branch, but still within that practice. And so when, we upkeep our own environment. And so when other people come in and they get to extract and make money off of these hikes and these treks that they have not contributed towards, that to me does feel like a slap in the face. And it is a form of indigenous erasure because they're not partaking in our practices. And I don't know if that's exactly what I'm asking or needing or wanting, but it's just something for y'all to know that if you're going to Oaxaca, asking what that tour guide's relationship is to the places that they're taking you is a critical component of hiring people. We'll go to the bottom here. That is my mother pouring mezcal, and that is our relative in the back with a goat. Y'all can see the little goat. So I love goat barbacoa. It's one of my favorite foods. And most of the time when I go to, well, not most of the time, but at least, every year or a couple of years, my parents would be like, what do you want to eat? And I'm like, y'all know what I want to eat. It's my goat barbacoa. And so we'll usually go to our neighbor or relative, and he sells his and butchers the goat. But before we do that, we give an offering and we, just thank it. And that's an important component of also butchering, I guess, and also like preparing our food. I didn't include this other one. Oh no, it is this one right here. I don't know if it was the same time, but I think it was different. But you could see right here, there's a big tina, and that's like the meat that's already in there. And so likewise, right before we're about to start cooking our food, we also pour a little bit of mezcal around the food, on the earth, like on the ground, and amongst each other. And it's also for a blessing. You probably maybe some of you have seen some of these practices when people make tamales and like they either bless it or they put a cross on it, or there's like other little things. But like, yes, you see it in like throughout Mexican culture, I would say, but it does have roots in indigenous lifeways and practices. The bottom one here is our Todo Santo altar. And in our pueblo in particular, there is no ofrenda. The ofrendas are these, by the way. The ofrenda is not the altar. The ofrenda is this. So the way that it works is that we only visit family members who had a family member pass away within the last year. And then we visit our comadres and compadres or godparents. And we take a basket with their pan de muerto, our flowers, a fruit, a veladora, and then a bottle of mezcal, chocolate as well. So that's what we take. And then we set it in front of the altar. So these are all the visitors that came to this home. And then the host family will usually welcome you with mezcal. It's the first thing that you drink as well, or that we drink, and then serve you your chocolate with your pan, and then the food follows. I'm going very quickly through but what I want y'all to understand is that there is intention, there is order, there is meaning behind the things that we do, what we do, and how we do them. And then this last one, mezcal is medicine. You can see here it has a bit of a green hue, and it's because it's been infused. And this one is a more modern one I took because my son had a fever. He was at his dad's, and I was like, I'm coming. I gotta help this baby, like reduce his fever. So I had roux or ruda with infused mezcal and then regular mezcal to just like put on his body, because that's what always helped my fever. That's what my mom did with me whenever we had fevers or headaches. That was a lot. Any questions? I'm gonna pause here. Otherwise, it's just me talking for like ever. Questions? Feel free to put them in the chat.
Not yet.
Not yet. Cool. And now let's talk about mezcal consumption in the United States. Ta-da! What do we hear? We hear that mezcal is tequila smoky, spicy cousin. This was like the headline for a very long time. We have that 13 mezcal cocktails our editors love, the 12 best mezcals to drink, 10 best mezcalerias in Oaxaca, the best mezcal margarita recipe. Click here to book your mezcal tour now. So it's a very different way of engaging with mezcal than what I just explained and shared. I don't know what was here, but clearly my screenshot didn't make it. And this is how it's consumed. Chef's dinner, mezcal cocktail party, mezcal dinner, these like tastings with the tasting wheel. It's a masterclass. And the pairings, of course, is a big thing, which are a lot of European concepts. The prefix menus, for example, that's French. So just noticing, right, that like the way that mezcal is being consumed by the industry, the way that it's being pushed by the industry, and therefore by people who work within the industry, is a very Europeanized way of engaging with the spirit. That does not mean don't engage with it this way. It's just an awareness thing. But yeah, it is not in the same way as that indigenous peoples from Valles Centrales engage with the spirit. And so I think this is where the question comes, like, is mezcal being culturally appropriated? This image, let's start with this image on the right hand, because this was from a few years ago. But when I look at the mezcal industry, this is what it looks like. It is white men selling bottles of mezcal with labels that went through the CRM or whichever, all the agencies or whatever agency folks chose, so that they can have the word mezcal on it or not, and have a little hologram or not, but basically selling it back to us at elevated prices without knowing what its origins are sometimes. The women here, you can visibly, if you're from Oaxaca, you can visibly tell that they're from Tlacolula because of what they're wearing. But to me, this is what it feels like, because truly, even in the pueblos, the ways that we use it, which I mentioned, right, just not too long ago, it's becoming harder and harder for people to afford mezcal, because now it's a luxury product, because now the production is being prioritized for the global north's consumption. And of course, that isn't just for mezcal. We've seen it with the tacos that are going up in price, and also, you know, being made by people who, like, I don't know, but probably didn't grow up with the taco, and like taco in the old ways where it's like you make your tortilla, you add salt, and that's what you feed the babies. Or like when the men are about to go into the campo, you get the taco, you put frijoles, chiles, maybe queso, because, you know, wow, what a luxury to have cheese. Their salsa, you roll it up, and that's what they take to the campo. And now we have like taco, the concept of tacos has definitely changed. I mean, reggaeton is there because, you know, it has the origins too. And then this one, this is the other one that stuck out to me, which is the chingon neta way. These are words that were associated with lower class people or a certain class of people, like people who use these words were not educated. And now the people who have commodified these words and used it for economic purposes, whether that's a mezcal brand or whether that's for their content creation purposes, right? Like you hear a lot of the fresa people starting to use these words. Fresa people are Mexican people who are higher class and consider themselves to be better than everyone else. So there's a little bit of snobiness in them. And then of course the salsas that are like not spicy anymore. So I do want to have a little conversation here because we have the time. There are more slides, but I want to hear what folks think, or like, how is this landing with you all? Elba, yes. Oops. Do you want to mute?
Hi, sorry. Hi. Hi everyone. Oh my gosh. I see what you're presenting. I know I joined a little late, but it's so true. I'm from Oaxaca. My from the city of Oaxaca. My mom was from Mitla, and my dad is from Etla. So all this, what you were talking about, the Dia de los Muertos, the ofrenda. I mean, I was, it's so many things were reminiscing in my mind and memories, from my grandparents and from my great grandparents. And I totally agree on what you're saying. And I have two daughters of my own, and they were born here, but I do teach them, you know, um, la cultura, Oaxaqueña and the Oaxacan culture. And because sometimes they do have questions like, oh, but this is what I see. I'm like, yeah, but this is not what it is. This is how it is. And so we're going to Oaxaca next year. Which I have my tias from my grandma's side, and of course they will learn more from how the culture is, the mezcal, the food, and like you said, a lot of these salsas, they're changing the dynamic of the food and the culture. For me, it's like it can be really frustrating for me sometimes to see this, but uh, I feel lucky that I was born in Oaxaca and raised, and and saw a lot of things passing from generations, from my mom to my grandmother to my great grandmother. And now I'm passing this to my daughters. And so, but yeah, thank you for showing this.
Thank you, Elba. Yes, and thank you for being here. I hope your trip next year is amazing. Sonia, I see your comment and your hand. Do you want to unmute?
Hi, thanks. I wanted to get your input on like an incident that happened at my university. But so at Cal State Long Beach, I'm with La Fuerza, and we do an altar celebrating Indigenous cultures. And last year we celebrated San Lucas Javanese, so my culture. But we got what's it called? What's the word? Reported for having mezcal in the center. And mind you, it's a Latino resource center to serve Latino students. And I talked with the admin and I spoke with the lead of the center, informing them that like it is a cultural piece. It's a very traditional piece that I use to honor my ancestors, and it's not used for consumption during Dia de los Muertos or Dia de los Santos. But they didn't really understand and wanted me to write it down. However, I don't think it'd be best to write the information down and instead have them research it, because writing it down and putting it on the outside could lead to commodification of the mezcal. And that way, like other Latina resource centers that are to serve Latino students but not Indigenous Latino students, well, like it'll prevent them from like copying it and putting it on their outside. But it's been an issue that I've been facing. But I also wanted to get your input on like how I could go about the situation, because it keeps getting brought up.
Hmm. Oh, that's a tough one. I think if other people can chime in, because I'm not in the university setting, but I will say that when my son had his altar project last year, second grade, we put a bottle of mezcal. It wasn't like an actual bottle we cut out like a bottle in the shape, and then, you know, of a bottle or something in the shape of a bottle, and then I put the maguey plant on the bottle. And, you know, when he explained it, he's like, yeah, this is mezcal. And he's like, and he uses the word mezcalito. It's un mezcalito. And I was like, oh, I may get in trouble for this because it's like second grade. It's like elementary school. But I was like, no, I will, like, let them come. So, you know, I think nobody flagged us. Nobody said anything. The teacher didn't pull me aside or anything. But I think had they done that, I would have educated them and been like, no, this is the problem with with consumerism in the US, is that you separate children from a cultural product because you are focusing more on making this a consumption and alcohol than something that is culturally relevant to us. Like, it is so normal for children to be around mezcal. This is where I get lost. When we look at videos, whether that's on a website or on Instagram, that's for a mezcal brand, and they show children running around in the palenques, helping make mezcal, but then like in the US, the consumption like completely erases that labor and erases that cultural component, that it is a family engagement. So I honestly don't know how to address it within academia. Yeah, I would need a lot more time to think about it. I think if others want to chime in, they can. I know we have about 15 minutes. I just got a little, you know, notification. Yeah, Sonia, we can also connect outside of this if you want. And then I see that Yossi said in Central Mexico, pulque is a traditional beverage in ofrendas like mezcal in Oaxaca. There you go. Yeah. And then Juan says, seems like we need to reframe our minds. Marketing it has taken the spiritual out of the spirit word. I see the use of mezcal to make menus or events seem more special in their own way, not the way mezcal is special, how you are showing. And then I'm grateful to hear your presentation because it will help reframe how I use mezcal with the people around me as well, from paternal family from Durango to friends around me. Yes, beautiful. Oops, let me see. I'm like, I don't see my presentation. All right, let's keep going. Dang. I have to do this again. I don't know why it's not. My images don't show sometimes. Close your eyes. I don't want to make you dizzy. Here we are. But then like we look at the mezcal industry. And by the way, I'm really not trying to like pick on one particular brand because it's not even about that. I literally went online and I'm like, oh yeah, let me see what brand like has something that's like, you know, they'll present or show parts of our culture when it's part of their marketing strategy. So here is una señora with her, and I would say clearly Oaxaqueña, indigenous woman with her copa de mezcal in her hand. My question is like, did she get royalties? Was she treated like a model? Is she part of like the budget? Is she part of like, what's up with that, right? Because otherwise it's again an extraction. And then here, you know, it looks like this definitely looks like it could be any other part of Mexico, but for me, it does remind me of Oaxaca. We don't really have the priests walking with us sometimes, or maybe they do. I don't know. I don't really go to church. But this walking inner streets, this type of procession seems like it's like a mesh of like the Catholicism and then like some indigenous elements, which I don't know, but it's just interesting to see this and how they use cultural elements as part of marketing. All right, let me present again. Yeah, and I see a lot of this. I'm glad I'm not the only person that has like, I get very uncomfortable when I see images of señoras, especially in their traditional clothing being taken pictures of, because it's just like, again, the lack of permission, the lack of consent. And that's just, it's not just a matter of like, hey, can we take your picture? Because most of the time people will say yes. It should be a self-responsibility. Why am I using this picture? Why do I want this person's picture? What does this do to me? How does it like, what is the intention behind me wanting to use this picture? Is it authentic? Is it like aligned? Is it rooted in integrity? Is it to really uplift the culture of mezcal by the original people and give them the platform? Or is it just to use them for part of our marketing campaign? So many questions that I think people don't ask themselves. All right, opportunities for repair in the California agave industry. This series is by the Cali Agave. And yes, we are starting to see a budding agave economy in California. And there's no stopping it. The wave is here. We just got to learn how to ride it, I think is how I feel about it, because nobody's, it's not going to stop. And there's a bunch of other things that I could say about that I won't at this time just because of time. But in terms of like, how do California maguey growers or distillers pay attribution or respect, the original people's stewards, cultural bearers of this plant and of the spirit? Well, appreciation is one of them instead of appropriation. So learning about the indigenous roots of the spirit, of the plant, the names even, and citing it. I use the academia, or maybe it's not even academia, but just like regular high school rules. Cite your sources, don't plagiarize. Building a relationship with the plant. I think a lot of people still, and especially in the US, especially, a lot of us like still see the plant as an object and not as something that is also part of the living world and a relative. And I do want to give a little shout out to Courtney, who is also here from Mi Oaxaca, who I've picked up, like she doesn't say like it or when like referring to a plant, but they or them or like a more human, maybe it's not even human, because just like an acknowledgement that it's not just an it, that it's like them, right? We respect them. And I've seen that, and definitely in a lot of Native and Indigenous spaces where you introduce yourself to the plant before you pick a fruit. I learned that in like other smaller spaces as well, but also it is rooted in indigenous culture, right? Like here's a little bit of mezcal before I pick and harvest or before I begin planting. Like there is a relationship that's being built. Attribution, naming the pueblos, communities who inspire you, your business, your project, sharing profits, resources with them, etc. Like really getting out of that like scarcity mentality and the competition. Like it's about collaboration. Truly what's going to get us through these chaotic years, if we ever want to end it, is collaboration. It's not going to be competition. That's not going to get us anywhere. And then I have bridge building, to collaborate and partner with and not extract. It's kind of similar. Some of these are kind of like blended in all of these. These are all the ideas that I had, but I'm sure there are more. We can talk about this one, but I also want to make sure I fit this in, that for me and for Mi Oaxaca, we are preserving our lifeways and our narrative with both consumers and hospitality industry people. So we do workshops. We don't call it tasting. We call it a sip and learn, because each workshop has an educational component to it. And it's information that every single time we have it, people will be like, I did not know that. I've done so many mezcal tastings and no one shares this information. And I'm like, yeah, because they're not from there. They're workers, they're brand ambassadors, they're part of a company. That's their job. It's to sell you a product. It's not to educate you about culture. We also do trainings with hospitality industry workers, because they really are that last line of defense. And they could so easily, but it is an opportunity there to insert some, like a seed of knowledge. Oh yeah, this mezcal comes from Oaxaca. Oaxaca has one of the largest indigenous populations. Did you know that Tobala actually has a Zapotec word for the plant? Just a fun fact, something quick, not a big lift. Just that's how we start, right? Just one little thing. And then we also have our online courses, and we have done a couple of culture exchange trips. We don't promote it. We don't want to be part of this, like, come to Oaxaca for $150. It's cheap, on a budget. When that kind of traveling just extracts from the people, it is costing somebody something. I get passionate, y'all. All right. And then I do want to invite people. We have a campaign right now, our Galaguetza campaign. It's until we have this open until December 31st. And this is to contribute to Mi Oaxaca's growth. Like a lot of this work has been quite, it's been a heavy lift. It's not easy to do this work. So if you believe in it, please go ahead and contribute. I will leave this QR code up, but you can also find it on our website. And then thank you, gracias. And in Zapoteco, gistioso. Our website is there, our IG is there. We don't post too often. Sometimes when we have a lot of things to say, we will. But thank you for your time. We have 5 minutes for questions, reflections, or if you need me to go to another slide, I can do that.
Okay, thank you very much, Fabiola. I feel very, very happy because you make us reflect that how we should respect and value the traditional products. And I think that is very important because sometimes we need to understand all the culture and all the values that are involved in one product. And when you describe all the custom that in Oaxaca the people have between the mezcal, I feel like, oh my God, I need to go to Oaxaca now. It's really incredible. And I say, oh, tengo que regresar a mi pueblo también, porque es así como, así me hiciste sentir, como esa nostalgia de que cuando estamos en la casa, cuando estamos compartiendo todos esos momentos, porque en México, en el centro, no tenemos el mezcal, tenemos el pulque y también alrededor de la bebida es una, es una cultura que se asocia mucho con las tradiciones que ustedes tienen en Oaxaca. Entonces, muchas gracias. And we don't have other question. Let me see. Adam Barnett tell us that I am bartender here in Los Angeles. What thought do you have in respect to building cultural respective brewing practice?
Yeah. Hi, Adam. Building culturally respectful buying practices. That's a big one. In our work that we do at Mi Oaxaca, the first step for us is to reflect on like why people consume. I think with mezcal being pushed as like something to consume, sometimes people consume it for the sake of consuming it and to be part of the in group or because it's trendy, and they may not necessarily actually like it. For example, like when I've done workshops, I ask people, what was your first experience with mezcal? If you've had that, more than half will say, oh, it was a cocktail. And then I give them a mezcal tradicional. They try it and they're like, oh, they either really love it because they're like, wow, it's delicious, or they'll not like it. And I'm like, well, yeah, if your palate is used to like not spicy salsa and you all of a sudden have a very spicy salsa, you're going to be like, whoa, what is this? I don't think I like it. It's too much. You like the bland, the plain stuff. It is. I don't know if that's mean or messed up, but that's how one of the ways that I see it. But then I'm like, great. Well, then maybe you shouldn't be consuming mezcal if you only like it in a cocktail or if you don't really like it at all. It's a little tricky, right? Because I'm not saying like don't engage in cocktails. I think some of the drinks can be very interesting, just know that cocktail culture also perpetuates monoculture, and just sit with that. I think in terms of like other culturally respectful practices, I don't know, having like a what do you call it? A bar director that actually has connections to the producers and to brands that are a little bit more ethical or more respectful, or just not maybe having other models that are not business as usual. There are not many, but that's okay. Better to just carry a few, because a lot of times people wanted to have the biggest, the largest collection. It's not about that. For me, I don't think it's about that. It's about being careful and curating like a good menu, and brands that are in alignment with the business, I think. So there's more, but I want to get through the other stuff. Let's see. Steve says, the affordability issue is one I've seen in almost all commodities in Mexico. I joke to my family that we ship all the high quality fruit and vegetables to US while Mexico stays with the ugly fruit. we would offer high-grade tomatoes, chiles, moron, and fruit locally in our pueblo at a break-even while exporting at a higher price. Do you think it would be more balanced for locals in Oaxaca and other mezcal regions if mezcal brands offered mezcal cheaply locally, and then that is subsidized by higher prices in US? I mean, ideally, my question, I think so, right? Like, so many things with this, because in one of the community forums that we had in Matatlan, we talked about this, like, you know, people can't afford mezcal anymore, or other things, the corn, right? The heirloom corn, because it's going through these other new companies that are catering to like the cute little pop-ups that exist all over the Bay Area and California and other places. But it's like, somebody said, why do we always have to send our good stuff? Why can't we keep the good stuff? This is one of the reasons why I'm not against the California agave economy, because maybe we don't need to be like, maybe product doesn't have to be moving so much if we have our own practices and our own distillations here in California. It's hard maybe for some people to understand it that way. The other thing is, like, as long as there's attribution being paid and maybe royalties and maybe like some other stuff, right? Some equity. But ultimately, a lot of times immigrant families and communities, they bring their culture to wherever we're migrating. And so why can't a distillate be part of it is my question, as far as like, as far as it relates to the California agave industry. And to Steve's point of like, maybe that way people can actually have the good quality stuff there. The question does become, if they can't afford it, because now this economy, this California agave is extracting knowledge and practices from a place that they don't pay respect to, then we are perpetuating poverty. So it gets tricky, but I think that's why we're here. Hopefully folks are here to just, you know, reflect a little bit on how to make your business models, your practices, your projects a little bit more equitable, and cite your sources, give attribution, and also a little bit of reparations wouldn't harm.
We have
So thoughts, go ahead.
yeah. This is for Emma Centeno, ecological farming. Okay, I'm curious about thoughts on more agave being planted in California. Consider a drought-tolerant plant. I feel like this is an important combo at this time as grapes are being pulled across the state.
Yeah. Well, my thinking starts at like the usage of drought tolerant. I feel like there's a lot of that's a tagline and a marketing scheme, but not really a practice. I think some of the folks in the California Alliance, Agave Alliance group, have noticed how certain farmers and growers rather will use these greenwashing techniques and language, but not actually practice what they are saying. The other thing about that, the drought tolerant argument, is that it doesn't, I don't know. I'm not a scientist in that way. I don't know the science behind it. But what I see is that Oaxaca has been experiencing immense fires in the last few years, and we have a ton of maguey. And so it is not drought tolerant if we are monocropping. The Valle Centrales keeps getting warmer. It keeps getting hotter. We keep deforesting so we can produce for people to have their mezcal cocktails, their espadín. And so there is no point in having, or like saying we should do this because like it's a drought tolerant plant, when the practices are actually not being ecosystemically informed. I think, yeah, there's more to say about that. Y'all are sending me the hard questions.
Yeah. We need to discuss more about this issue. It's very important. I think that all of argument, all people in Mexico and USA and California are important, and we need to find the balance between to respect the culture and produce different byproducts that we can obtain from the wonderful plant that is agave. I think that it's the beginning of the one industry, not only in Mexico, not only California, is more far away, because the benefit that we can obtain of this plant is incredible. But we need to make a different discussion about that. And like said Elba, el mezcal se disfruta en su pureza natural. No. Bueno, pues I don't know if you have any other questions. If not, is the time for ending this talk. Thank you very much, Fabiola, for your time. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining this webinar. We need to prepare all different discussion about agave and other issues. But thank you for coming. And Fabiola, if you want to read the last comment, please.
We have a comment from Willow. La Cosmatli, truly appreciate this presentation and questions asked, bringing up the importance of acknowledgement, permission, and compensation. I came here today because I want to build relations with my gay plant going forward. Beautiful. Thank you for naming that. I also included in the comments link to get on our email list if you want to learn about our other offerings. Please subscribe. We don't spam. We can barely get an email out a quarter.
Yeah.
But we do have more. I think for the folks who are in LA in the bartending world, besides the 6-week course, we also offer trainings. So I think if you would like a more customized training, we're also open for that in 2026. And then just hit us up. Check out our IG where you can learn more information. Thank you so much. Thank you, Yessi and Cali Agave and the Agave California folks here. It was so good to see you all. And yeah, beautiful.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Bye. See you.